conflict. The president posting just in the last few moments on Truth Social that we know exactly, he says, where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He is an easy target, but it is safe there. We are not going to take him out, kill, at least not for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. Thank you for your attention. He went on in a second post to post unconditional surrender in all caps. Scott, both of those coming just a few minutes.
All right, so a critical update here, obviously, on Iran. Critical update from Donald Trump on Iran. Trump not only warning that we have control of the skies in Iran, as he writes, we now have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. Iran had good sky trackers and other defensive equipment, and plenty of it, but it doesn't compare to American-made, conceived, and manufactured stuff. Mind you, he's we're conflating a few things here because it's not just American versus Iranian-made stuff. It's also the fact that Israelis had commandos on the ground deep inside of Iran, able to launch a simultaneous assault against their surface-to-air missile equipment, while at the same time enabling Israeli aircraft and fighter jets to enter the Iranian airspace. These posts, by the way, I throw them up on in the Meet Kevin app. I sent out a notification of this this latest news from Trump here. You can get that as well, totally for free. Just type Meet Kevin into the Google or Android App Store. But anyway, take a look at this. We're now hearing that a cyber attack is hitting Iranian banks and other Iranian infrastructure. Iran is claiming that Israel is launching a massive cyber war against Iran right now, targeting all digital infrastructure. And a lot of people are worried that this is going to inhibit people's ability to fill up their gas tanks and actually escape Tehran, which is exactly what the Chinese and President Trump are telling Iranians to do. Leave Tehran as soon as possible. The U.S. military is now moving fighter jets into the Middle East and at the same time extending the deployment of warplanes. It's unclear whether this is to refuel Israeli jets or American jets or, frankly, both. But Donald Trump has also now just provided some other pretty extreme updates, confirming that we are not trying to take out the Ayatollah, however, claiming that we know exactly where the supreme leader is hiding and that our patience is wearing thin. Now, why is this critical? Well, in my opinion, it's very critical because if we take out the Ayatollah, it's possible that this turns into more than just a targeted attack against the nuclear enrichment facilities within Iran, which is essentially a war that the people of Iran don't seem to want to support. I don't think Iranians are like, yeah, let's risk our lives so we can enrich nuclear weapons. I'm not convinced that's what the Iranian people want. But the Iranian people also want independence of their own religion. And so taking out a religious leader, even though he's become somewhat of a military guider, the Ayatollah, guiding attacks potentially, or authorizing or blessing attacks, however we want to put it, I'm not entirely sure taking out the religious leader would be the best way to mitigate this war from boiling over into a larger uprising, potentially from, sects or groups outside of Iran, including inside of Iraq or inside of Afghanistan or in other parts of the Middle East, leading to potentially a broader boiling over. This has not stopped Donald Trump from suggesting that we could end up taking him out. In fact, Donald Trump says we know exactly where the so-called supreme leader is hiding. He's an easy target, but is safe there. We are not going to take him out, kill, at least for now. But we don't want missiles shot at civilians or American soldiers. Our patience is wearing thin. So this is basically, if you attack us, we'll kill the supreme leader. So don't attack us, is basically what Trump is saying here. But he's also saying, in my opinion, that we're trying to avoid this sort of religious war that could exacerbate this and take it from just an attack against nuclear facilities, which the IAEA, just this morning, the International Atomic Energy Association, or administration, I can never remember what the A is. But anyway, the IAEA, I'm going to look right now because I got to get it right. They claimed this morning, it's agency. I got it wrong twice. International Atomic Energy Agency, who cares? Anyway, they claimed that initial damage to Natanz, the nuclear enrichment facility, it was substantially worse than previously expected. So they're actually upgrading the damage that was conducted to that facility. Of course, Fordo has not been hit yet to the level to where underground bunkers are expected to have been compromised. This is where Israel is really pushing for support from the United States. Donald Trump goes on as far as to say that I believe this is a claim saying that we are demanding unconditional surrender now from Iran. It's also worth looking at this New York Times piece, how Trump shifted under Iran pressure on Iran, under pressure from Israel, rather. Take a look at this. Benjamin BT, Prime Minister BB was planning for an imminent attack on Iran's nuclear program with or without the participation of the United States. During a strained phone call in late May, Trump again warned Bibi against a unilateral attack that would short-circuit diplomacy. However, over the last several weeks, it became increasingly apparent that the Trump administration might not be able to stop Bibi this time. Contrary to Israeli claims, senior administration officials were unaware of any new intelligence showing that Iranians were rushing to build a nuclear bomb, a move that would justify a preemptive strike. But seeing they would most likely not be able to deter Bibi and were no longer driving events, Mr. Trump's advisors weighed alternatives. One of the alternatives was sitting back and doing nothing and then deciding what would happen once Israel attacks. At the other end, we could join Israel in the assault. Obviously, at this point, we decided to sit back and, well, do the following. Choose a middle course. Offer Israel yet undisclosed support from the intelligence community. Yeah, okay, as of yet undisclosed. We knew this. Day one when this happened on Friday, I'm like, look, the U.S. is saying they're not involved. I guarantee you they're providing intelligence. This is basically the sit back and do nothing approach, but still provide intelligence, right? This is not a surprise to me that the CIA is all over this, entirely all over this. So anyway, this is interesting because this is basically the New York Times making the argument that, oh yeah, no, we are definitely providing intelligence and it should come as no surprise to anyone. But anyway, continuing here, to carry out its attack and then turning up pressure on Tehran to give immediate concessions at the negotiating table or face military onslaught. 5 days after the attack Israel launched, Mr. Trump's posture continued to gyrate. The administration at first distanced itself from the strikes, then grew more publicly supportive as Israel's initial military success became evident. I feel like this is kind of like joining the winner after the winner started winning. But then again, we were providing background intelligence for a while. Now, Mr. Trump is seriously considering sending American aircraft to help refuel Israeli combat jets and to try to take out Iran's deep underground nuclear site at Fordow with 30,000-pound bunker-busting bombs. The story of what led up to the Israeli strike is one of two leaders in Mr. Trump and Bibi who share a common goal, preventing Iran from getting a nuclear bomb, but who are wary of each other's motives. Interviews with dozens of officials in the U.S., Israel, and Persian Gulf show how Trump vacillated for months about whether or not to contain Netanyahu's impulses as he confronted the foreign policy crisis of his second term. This is the thing that makes me so confusing about Trump. Trump comes across as so blunt and supposedly this strong, powerful negotiator, but here he can't even constrain Bibi. In fact, they talk about during this strained phone call, Trump again warned Bibi not to attack, and Bibi does, like, sorry, bro, we've made our decision. As Donald Trump rushed back to Washington, Trump took issue with an element of the public testimony of Tulsi Gabbard. The intelligence community did not believe Iran was building nuclear weapons, even as it enriches uranium that could ultimately be used for a nuclear arsenal. I don't care what she said, Trump told reporters. I think they were very close to having them. So in other words, you've got this sort of, again, communication problem within the Trump White House where it's sort of like, one hand is saying one thing and the other hand is saying another. Tulsi is like, oh, as director of national intelligence, we don't think they're anywhere close to a bomb. They might still be 3 years out. Trump's like, they were pretty close. Israel says they were, days away from potentially having 13 different bombs, which of course the risk is that not necessarily that Iran deploys them, but they end up getting into the hands of the Houthis, terror groups inside of Iraq, Hezbollah, or worse, even Hamas. Hamas would almost certainly love to lob one of these. Beyond the lives lost and destruction wrought, the crisis has also laid bare the schisms between Trump's party and those inclined to defend Israel. Well, that's the other thing, is now you've got a lot of folks, even Republican senators, speaking out, and representatives like Massey, demanding that Trump not enter this war. When Mr. Trump met with top advisors at a wooded presidential retreat in Camp David late on Sunday, June 8th, to review the situation, the CIA Director John Ratcliffe provided a blunt assessment. It was highly likely, he said, that Israel would soon strike Iran with or without the U.S., according to two people familiar with the brief. The president sat at the head of the table in the rustic conference room inside the Laurel Lodge. There were no slides, only maps prepared by the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. For 2.5 hours, he and Radcliffe described their expectation of an imminent Israeli attack. Well, there you go, U.S. intelligence once again on it. Mrs. Gabbard was on the National Guard duty that weekend and was not included in the meeting. Mr. Trump's advisors had been preparing for the moment. In late May, they had seen intelligence that made them concerned that Israel was going to move ahead with a major assault on Iran, regardless of what the president was trying to achieve. Based on this, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio encouraged an effort to give the president a range of options so he could make a quick decision. Mr. Trump met multiple times with advisors to be on the same page about what the menu of options was, and the Israeli leader was about to give the unequivocal go. Bibi laid out his intentions at a high level, according to three people familiar with the call. Mr. Trump was impressed by the ingenuity of the Israeli military planning, and he made no commitments. But I think we might have to help them, Trump said. Yeah, no kidding. Which we already have, right? Not just with intelligence, but also shooting down attacks against Israel. Still, the president was torn about what to do next. Unlike the anti-interventionist wing of the party, Mr. Trump was never of the view that America could live with and contain an Iran with a nuclear bomb. This is something Trump has been very clear about. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. So this is really interesting because it gives you this deep dive breakdown of how Trump basically saw his ability to negotiate start breaking down. As much as Donald Trump pitched, I don't want a war, I want a deal, it's just not going in Trump's manner. But it is also very interesting because now you have people like Tucker Carlson, basically, taking this more anti-interventionist approach, which is this idea of like, hey, like, let Israel do Israel. Like, we don't have to get involved with everything. And yesterday, Donald Trump actually called Tucker Carlson kooky Tucker Carlson, which is odd because Tucker Carlson was somebody who really strongly helped Donald Trump get elected. And to call him kooky is very similar to sort of this flip that he pulled with Elon, where all of a sudden they were friends and then they're not. Was it Elon's fault? Was it Trump's fault? Nobody really knows. But somebody please explain to kooky Tucker Carlson that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. This is an interesting sort of flip for somebody who's been a big fan of Donald Trump. And so we'll show just on screen here, that is Donald Trump's truth right here. Now, obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of information that we're not getting in even this very, very long breakdown of essentially where meetings happened, what we know, and what the latest is. But the point is, when we get to the end of this article, we see that publicly, and you can read this whole thing yourself, but publicly, Mr. Trump was still stressing the importance of giving diplomacy a chance. However, as of last Wednesday, there was no indication of any negotiated breakthrough, and an attack would start the next day. And this is just the frustrating part of what we're finding is there's so much hope for deals, but we're not necessarily seeing them, whether it's on trade, Russia, or Iran. In private conversations, Trump questioned the wisdom of the decision to attack. I don't know about Bibi, he told one associate, adding that he had warned him against strikes. Okay? But as the night wore on, the Israelis landed a spectacular series of precision strikes, and Mr. Trump began to change his mind about his public posture. When he woke up Friday morning, his favorite TV station, Fox News, was broadcasting wall-to-wall imagery of what it was portraying as Israel's military genius. And Trump could not resist claiming some credit for himself. Oh, is this where he does the 60-day thing? It's so funny. We were live streaming, and Israel was bombarding Iran, and we're live streaming, and then all of a sudden a message comes from Trump that's like, I gave them 60 days. Israel attacked on the 61st day. And it was kind of a way, and I even said this live on Friday. I'm like, oh, This is Trump trying to take credit again, for like, well, I tried. They didn't want to listen. This is what they get. Implying Trump is taking credit for Israel's attack when the reality is, at least based on what we're hearing, Trump did not want this to happen at all. And only in hindsight did we sort of get some credit taking. Very interesting. And it does, there are a few big things that we're getting from this. We're getting, this understanding that we know where the Ayatollah is. But again, nobody's really talking about this, at least. This is sort of my opinion. But my opinion is they don't want a religious war here, right? And so this is why, attacking the Ayatollah may not be the most ideal strategy. That's my opinion. It's also possible that you've got a Donald Trump here who is somewhat frustrated that right now you kind of don't have a very clear idea of what to do. And I think that's where all of us are sitting around going, okay, what do we do now? Because now we're in a place where Israel's just going to keep bombarding Iran. For how long? We don't know, until the job is done. And all of a sudden, we're in a place where now we're hearing, yeah, we've been providing intelligence to them all along. This is no surprise, and I was looking for it, but I finally found it. Take a look at this. So on the 13th, which was Friday, George Gammon posted, probably a stupid question. I don't know anything about warfare, but how does Israel know where all these scientists are at a precise time in order to kill them? Well, I said here the same thing I've been saying on my live streams, and you can see my reply here on June 13th. CIA. It's not that hard. That's the point of the CIA, right? So, now we have confirmation that that's exactly what Marco Rubio has been pushing the Trump administration to do, to provide intelligence to the Israelis. So, now that we have this information, we can see the cues are rolling off a little bit more because, it's clear here Trump isn't really in the driver's seat over here. He's kind of playing Mr. Reaction. And, you have, remember, my goal is not to shill to any particular audience. It's just to provide perspective, and then you could do with it what we want or what you want. But, you have these people like Charlie Kirk who are just shilling Trump, and he posts so freaking much on here. But here, Trump was elected for moments like this is what he posts yesterday. And then I've seen this movie before. People freak out. People believe half-truths online, freak out even more. And then Trump ends up being right. And all he does is shill for Trump. And I think it just sort of neglects to recognize that there's a lot more going on here. Like, maybe Donald Trump doesn't actually know what to do right now. And that does create some level of uncertainty because this is to some extent out of the hands of Donald Trump now. We've armed Israel for the last years. For actually decades, really. Trump won, Biden, and otherwise. Israel's got a lot of weapons and support from us. And now they're utilizing it for the purposes that they think are best. And there's little that can be done to stop Israel. And the United States certainly isn't in a position to say that they're not going to support Israel. They would always take the side of Israel. The question is what our involvement is now going to sort of devolve into. And it's interesting because it just goes to show that we are not the ones in the driver's seat. Ken says, I'm curious about all of those reactors handling the explosions. I think there's going to be radiation everywhere or leaks everywhere. Not so nice accountability problem people are going to have. So keep in mind, there are nuclear reactors where you are actively undergoing fission reactions to generate electricity. Long story short, the unstable uranium essentially heats up water to the point it boils, steams. The steam is funneled through pipes, through higher pressure valves, basically, by narrowing the steam, compressing the steam into pipes, which then run through turbines, which turn a generator, which, guess what, generates electricity, okay? That would be an example of a reactor. Very, very overly simplified explanation of a reactor. What Iran is doing is really enriching uranium. So you're taking uranium ore, you're sorting, separating out the uranium. One of the ways you can refine uranium over and over and over again is through a cyclical, sort of recursive process of centrifuging the product. And so that's basically like spinning it around in a vat. and trying to separate out the components. Some of the components go to the outside of the centrifuge, some of them go to the center of the centrifuge, and then now as you separate the product, you basically get enriched uranium. And the more and more enrichment cycles you go through, the more higher grade uranium you get. And once you get to a certain level, you can get uranium that you could use for energy purposes, which Iran has always said that that's their goal, is domestic energy production. At the same time, you could keep enriching this material, taking a precursor like yellow cake, which is one of the sort of precursors of enriched uranium, enrich it even further, and then get weapons-grade uranium. Technically, bombing the centrifuges generally would be less of a radioactive event than, certainly, if all of the sort of a yellow cake goes dusting up everywhere in the air, it's problematic, but it's less of a radioactive event than you would have from like a Chernobyl crisis, right? That's what we don't want to see.